Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road journey. I can't hear myself over the traffic. I hope you heard that. This week we're still exploring the county of Surrey. In the last episode we took in the delights of places like Guildford and Woking, so I assume things can only improve from here. Today's journey will take us from Epsom to Reigate, and as always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and who knows what we'll discover along the way, so let's get started. Epsom then. In the days of my guidebook, a fairly busy town with around 19,000 residents. And it's interesting because, unlike a lot of towns, the growth of Epsom came early on in the 17th century following the discovery of some magical healing water. This led to Epsom becoming a spa town and a popular tourist destination. Later on, chalk quarries were set up to manufacture lime. Brickworks and tileworks arrived, and for some reason Epsom became a major player in the horse racing world, with the first race occurring here in the early 1660s. So yeah, there's been a lot going on in Epsom. About that magical healing water, the story goes that on Epsom Common, a farmer discovered a water source that his livestock refused to drink. No one knew why, but they did know that this meant the water had medicinal purposes, which of course led to much profiteering by way of several spas being set up. But what was it about the water that made it so beneficial? Nothing really. It had a high content of magnesium sulfate heptahydrate, and that's about it. I don't know what that is, so we'll use the more common name Epsom salt. It was salt water. No wonder the animals weren't drinking it. However, you've probably heard of Epsom salts. It's an ingredient that's used in many products today, mainly bath salts, and its name does indeed reflect its first discovery, if you will. The thing is, the actual salt product isn't unique to the area. You'll find this salt all over, but it's believed that Epsom was the first place where this salt was used in a medicinal sort of pharmaceutical kind of way, and the name Epsom salt has stuck ever since. After that rather salty reception, because of the salt, let's move on. And our next destination is the lovely Leatherhead. To get there is easy. Just follow the A24, keep going straight, and eventually you'll be in Leatherhead. Cool, Leatherhead then. And in the days of my guidebook, there wasn't really a lot going on, with the town mostly made up of wealthy residents from London who had no incentive to do anything. My guidebook suggests maybe we'd like to visit a church, so come on, let's go take a look. Leatherhead Parish Church was built in the early 1200s, and a lot of the structure is still original, but not all of it, in particular this door. In 1759 it was widened to accommodate a rather important vehicle. In them days the local church was responsible for organising the fire service, but rather than construct a specific fire station building, they used the church. But its old design meant they couldn't fit in their firefighting truck or cart, so they widened the door, and the base of the church tower was used as a fire station of sorts right up until the 1820s, at which point it was all moved out to a separate building. Not this building, but let's take a look anyway. It's the Leatherhead Pumping Station, an imposing building that was constructed in 1935. It housed massive diesel-powered water pumps, yet despite its size and menacing appearance, it didn't really do all that much. It took water from Mill Pond, which is found just across the road, and pumped this water to a treatment works not even half a mile away at a place called Leith Hill. Today I don't think it's used for anything at all. It's not a grade listed structure as far as I know, so yeah, it just sits here and is no doubt an eyesore to local residents. I quite like it. Moving on to our next destination, and whilst I will be following our period correct maps as best I can, on the A24 unavoidable changes were made in the 1930s when the road was turned into a dual carriageway. In doing so, they created a wonderfully dangerous section of road because, as you can see on a map, the road is quite tightly curved with lots of hidden exits and entrances. Naturally, they set a 70-mile-per-hour limit on the road and the accident rate skyrocketed. Attempts were made to resolve this in the late 90s by converting the southbound carriageway to a single lane, so now you've got nowhere to go when someone pulls out on you. Thankfully that's been avoided, and as a result I find myself in the town of Dorking, where I thought we'd take a look at a petrol station. It's known as Pitbrook Garage, or it was, and between the years of 1947 and 1970 it was home to Rob Walker's racing team, the most successful private racing team in Formula One. Yeah, who'd have thought it, Formula One here in Dorking. But if you watched last week's episode, you'll know that Brooklands race circuit isn't all that far from here, and indeed Brooklands turned Surrey into the home of motorsport, and Dorking was very much included. Being a privately funded team, they didn't build their own cars, they bought existing cars from various manufacturers such such as Connaught or Lotus, and then made various tweaks to the cars according to the driver's needs. Speaking of drivers, Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham and Graham Hill are just some of the drivers who raced for Rob Walker in racing cars that were painted blue and white, the same colours as the Scottish flag, rather than the traditional British racing green. Another fun fact, it was common for the police to be called to the garage here in Dorking following noise complaints specified as loud engine noises. Allegedly, a cup of tea and a biscuit soon had the officers on their way. My guidebook suggests that when in Dorking, why not visit Leith Hill, which isn't in Dorking. However, if these trees weren't in the way, we'd probably be able to see Dorking from here, because Leith Hill is the highest point in Surrey and the second highest point in the southeast of England at 965 foot above sea level. On the top of the hill is Leith Tower, commissioned by a bloke called Richard Hull in the year 1764. His intention was to extend the highest point of the hill to over 1,000 feet. With the tower coming in at 64 feet, he achieved this with a total of 1,029 feet. After Richard's death, the tower was immediately stripped of its contents down to the brickwork, filled with rubble and concrete, the entrance bricked up and left abandoned. No one else cared, it seems. Until 1864, when attempts were made to restore the tower. However, this proved to be very difficult with all of the concrete and rubble in the way, and in the end they constructed a bolt-on tower to gain access to the upper parts of the original structure, bypassing the issue altogether. The concrete and rubble remained in place until 1984, at which point Surrey Council did a full restoration on the tower. Two fun facts for you. The flagpole on the top isn't a flagpole, it's actually a telephone mast disguised as a flagpole, and it's also made out of Reigate stone, which is something we learned all about in last week's episode. Onwards we go, and it's a bit of an awkward journey as we make our way through various country lanes, but there isn't really a more direct route, so we'll just enjoy the scenery. These roads haven't changed at all since the old days, but in the middle of our next destination is an excellent example of an abandoned road for us to look at. I've come to Reigate, and I lied. It's not exactly an abandoned road, more a repurposed road. In the centre of Reigate we find Tunnel Road that in the days of my guidebook was open to motor vehicles and part of the A217. It dates back to the 1820s and it's believed to be Europe's first road tunnel. It's not clear why it was built, but it was funded by the same person that owned the land that it was built on, and upon opening a toll was charged, so I can only imagine it was a money-making scheme for the then landowner. In the 1950s, the southbound carriageway would close before the tunnel was completely pedestrianised in 1970. The tunnel runs underneath a hill that used to be home to Reigate Castle. It was built in the mid-1100s, of which there is nothing left to see because it was demolished in 1648. Don't be fooled by the medieval-looking gateway. This was built in 1777 as a mock-up and therefore is far from original. Beneath the castle site is a set of caves known as Barons' Caves. Some believe they were dug out when the castle was built in the 1100s, but the truth is, no one knows how old they are. The earliest records date them to 1586, so still pretty old. Likewise, no one knows why they were built. Theories include a castle dungeon or an escape tunnel, but the reasons remain unclear. In the days of my guidebook, the caves were open as a tourist attraction. In fact, it's believed that tours of the caves started in the 1860s, and whilst it has been closed for the odd bit of restoration here and there, the caves are still open today as a tourist attraction, offering guided tours nearly 165 years after they first began. Our last stop brings us to Reigate Heath, a short distance from Reigate town centre, and I wanted to take a look at Reigate Mill Church, which you'll notice is more windmill than it is church. It's a Grade 2 listed structure that was built in 1765 and it worked as a regular windmill until the 1860s. In 1880, the lower roundhouse part of the windmill was converted into a church for some reason, and it's been like that ever since, making it possibly the only consecrated church windmill in the world. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.